Anything on this one?
I think it's waiting for review.
From people.
Yes. It'd be fairly straightforward.
Cool. Anything on this one? This is waiting on review, right? Should I add?
Yeah, I think Natalie mentioned something in the earlier that there was some naming discussions going on or something, like a key change or something, but
Make sure Joe and Terrence get added. There's a key change, some typos. Cool. Anything on platform? This has enough, I think.
I think we still need that branch to be created. I'm not sure if I can do it. Let me see if I have the permission. I think I might. I can answer Sim's questions as well.
Some of these look different. Wasn't this SBOM in the RFC?
It was this. I think it wasn't even under layers SBOM. It was layers config SBOM because of the reason I pointed to below, which is there might be build packs that are using the ID bomb, and I'm not sure what happens when they do that.
That was I did a find and replace, but I didn't click match case. So yeah, I just made things into bomb that let me go fix that. I can undo that mistake.
I think even then we'll run into the same problem where like config right now has forever been like a reserved folder under layers. So like it won't cause breakages, but like if we add new arbitrary folders there, it's gonna cause.
How worried are we that somebody has a build pack with the ID SBOM though?
Yes.
Right. I'm not particularly worried about it. Now config and SBOM are special IDs that you're not allowed to choose.
I mean, I think we should maintain a list of
yeah, reserved words.
Yeah. I think the issue is that there's no way to make it backwards compatible. Like you can have like a build pack with an older API still using SBOM, and then like one of the build packs move to a newer API in that group, and then things might break. So
require the hypothetical people who have named their build packs SBOM to make a change for the next release, maybe. Natalie, are you also changing this to SBOM instead of SBOM? Or
yeah,
is there...
yeah, that was totally a mistake that I did it. That changed that to layers bomb. In which case, Sam, are you okay if the buildpack.toml field name is also SBOM formats?
Yeah, I just whatever is consistent is fine. I think it was just because like the issue is like we have always referred to it as bomb instead of SBOM, and there was the other argument that like things like Cyclone DX can describe services and hardware as well in the bomb, so it's not technically a software bill of materials, it's just a bill of materials. So
but in this context, it is a software bill of materials, right? We're talking about for the image.
I mean, if people add, like, there's nothing stopping producers from adding like service bombs or other things in the Cyclone DX bombs they generate. So,
but it's not the purpose of it in this context, right? Like
yes.
Cyclone DX can have a bomb that we're using in this context as an SBOM to describe the container image.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing is like this container interacts with certain microservices, and you want to describe the versions for those services. That's also completely plausible and doable. And I don't know, like that was like one of the threads around. Like there was some random Twitter thread where someone was saying containers don't use software dependencies like libraries anymore. They just call out to microservices. There's nothing that captures those version numbers. And then they were like, no, Cyclone DX does, and whatever.
Interesting. I think we're trying to capture the dependencies that are in the image itself, right? That's like, because we want to do security scanning on it, and you wouldn't, it doesn't matter if your microservice image talks to another microservice image at a version. We don't want to reflect that in the software. I don't know. Okay, whatever.
Yeah.
It's not that important. I think we should, can we try to stick to what is in the Anthony implemented in the RFC here? Because I think some folks are testing against that, unless somebody disagrees, right? If we stick to the thing that, we have the proof of concept for.
I mean, given that this is still just a proof of concept, we should make decisions that are long lasting rather than based on this PR. So if people, like whatever people think is the best name, it's just that so far the project has always referred to it as BOM, not SBOM. And we'll be changing that. So that's it.
Yeah, I would say that too, right? I don't think I really have a preference on SBOM versus BOM, but I do think that consistency is important for a lot of the existing keys and anything moving forward.
So just as a counter argument to that, because I thought about that too, I feel like introducing a slightly different terminology is also kind of a signal that, hey, this is different. Like this is actually, this was my fault because I actually thought it was standardized bill of materials instead of software bill of materials. And I was like, oh, it makes perfect sense because now it's following a format, whereas before it was just free fall. So it's like there's some benefits to the renaming, is all I'm saying.
I agree. I think it's a nice advertisement for the future that, instead of the thing we call the bill of materials before, right? It's now a proper SBOM is the terminology that people are using to describe SPDX and Cyclone DX formatted metadata added to images in a standardized format. Even if it doesn't stand for standardized, I think it does kind of convey that, intent.
I mean, whatever people find fine, but I would just say that like our structs and other things, a lot of things refer to it as BOM, and we use SBOM in some places. That's just confusing. Whatever we decide, it's fine. We should just make it consistent. Even the file names themselves, like they're just like bom.json instead of sbom.json. So
I vote SBOM. The inconsistency bothers me a little bit less as long as it's consistent in the API, if that makes sense. Or like, I don't care about the Ghost structs very much, but
the API exposes that, right? Like users will create files called something.bom.json and instead of sbom. So that's going to affect people.
does it have to be called? Sorry.
It's called layer.bom.extension. So we just should be consistent. That's it. I don't care whether it's BOM or SBOM at this point. It just like just consistency.
Should probably have. I see what you mean here now. This should probably have a dot in front of it too, right? Sorry, but yes, yeah. This we can rename that SBOM too.
So are we going with layers SBOM thing.sbom.cdx.json?
For what it's worth, I think like again, these are all like random conventions people have built. Like Cyclone DX calls its BOM files bom.json, and I asked them to change it to something like .cdx.json so that we have consistency with the other formats that have like name whatever, like name your BOM file whatever, just have the extension be something. They have a convention where the BOM file itself must be called BOM.json. So that's annoying.
So we're already violating that convention with bomb.cdx.json.
Yeah,
So it's
I asked them to add this as a convention as well, which they were somewhat pliable to, but they still wanted to keep bomb.json around.
But you asked them to add .cdx.json, and so
yeah.
it's okay if we switch to sbomb.cdx.json. It doesn't do anything weird. Okay,
Yeah.
Cool. Anything else on SBOM RFCs
I think
or spec PRs?
I still don't know whether we want to move the label to a separate key or just put it under lifecycle metadata. I don't have a preference. The RFC called for putting it under the lifecycle metadata label, but if we want to shift it to its own label, I would do it now rather than introduce this in an intermediate stage, then just move it out into a separate label. So whatever we are planning for, do it now.
Wait, sorry, move what to where?
So currently the SBOM diff ID is under a key inside the metadata, lifecycle metadata label. And the other RFC proposes it to be a top level label. So I'm fine with whatever. We should just make those changes now.
So why can't we wait for the other RFC to get added in order to add it as an additional, like it can exist in both places, right?
It causes confusion, right? Like I don't know, like I would just pick one. Like it's just convention we are inventing. It's nothing
that
has been introduced to the API so far. So let's just pick one.
It's just a process concern because we didn't get it approved in anything. But if nobody cares, I'm happy to say yes, probably a good idea to add it in the label in the RFC.
Yeah, I mean the RFC, like the RFC states it should be in some label. I don't care which label. It should just be in the spec. That's it.
Can you suggest that in the spec PRs and then Anthony's lifecycle thing?
I did add that as a comment.
Okay. Cool. I agree. I mean, I'm not pushing back on it. I just technically we didn't approve it as part of the other thing.
For what
moving on.
it made the implementation much easier to keep it in the lifecycle metadata, which is why we said, oh, okay, well, we can just duplicate it if necessary for people to feel satisfied. But that's why I was kind of in favor of either duplicating it or just having it in the.
I mean, is there any benefit to putting it into its own label? I mean, it's just convention, right? They'll just look wherever we're telling them to look. So, yeah, whatever.
What other information is in the lifecycle metadata? Because I guess maybe I'm thinking through the run image itself doesn't have that lifecycle metadata. The builder does, right?
The run the run image doesn't, but this is the label on the output image, right?
But there's a lifecycle metadata on the builder image, or is there not? I thought there would be. And I guess ultimately what I was going to get at is if we're using the same label in multiple places, I would, from an API consumer perspective, I would expect the structure to be the same and not mutable, right? Meaning that on the final app image, it shouldn't all of a sudden have an extra key.
I consider the lifecycle metadata label to be like internal metadata that's intended for the lifecycle's consumption and not something that's external. And if we're going to add another label that describes the base image metadata, that's going to be on the final image as this is where the base image metadata lives. It feels very weird to say you find the base image metadata by looking at IO build packs base.sbom, and you find the app level metadata by looking at IO build packs lifecycle metadata and then deeply introspecting in a struct to find the rest of it. That feels like a bad interface to me.
Yeah.
So
Could
But
we
but
it
sorry,
and
go ahead.
if we were to duplicate it when that, I mean, I know it's duplication is bad. We already duplicate stuff across different labels on the image. Like
What's the value of duplication?
to make the lifecycle implementation easier, since we're already passing the struct around, you know, in the cache and in the exported image, like
I think we would be doing a disservice if the spec was based on the implementation, right? I think the spec and the contract should be based on what makes the most sense there, not the other way around.
But if the lifecycle metadata label is already meant to be sort of internal information that the lifecycle needs, like, can we just, I mean,
Yeah, the duplication doesn't bother me as long as it's just for the life cycle's consumption, and we can come back later and add the label for end user consumption, right?
I think the problem to me is that when we're talking about for lifecycle consumption, at the end of the day, we should be thinking about the spec itself. And so if the spec is saying that it has to be in the lifecycle metadata and also in this other thing, that doesn't necessarily make sense to me. Whereas maybe what I'm hearing is that we would put it in the lifecycle metadata, but not spec it out, but the lifecycle itself knows that that information is there. And I think that is wrong, right? Like, then if somebody else wants to implement the lifecycle in their own form or fashion, now there's like hidden secrets of why things may or may not work correctly.
It is spec'd out though, like all the keys and lifecycle metadata are currently in the platform spec.
I don't like that. I kind of think, I think there's probably information that should be split out, right, from different parts eventually.
I mean, it's also going to be useful because like whatever like platforms like Pack or KPack, which currently expose a way to download the, at least KPack CLI does, they expose a way to download the ESPOM, they'll need to look at that label. So it's not just for internal.
Yeah. Right, and that's why I again, from a spec consumer perspective, I would want to see it as its own label and not as an internal piece of information that's only available or scoped to the lifecycle.
I agree that it should be its own label. My question is, it seems like it's going to be, we're about to cut a lifecycle release soon. We can get this feature in and get security scanning and build pack images. You know, is it okay to have the field live in lifecycle metadata for one release and then come back in the next release and add two official fields for both base image metadata and app image metadata in the subsequent release? And to me, that seems okay, because we're not going to have an official contract for reading SBOM for either layer, right, until the second release. So that way we don't do half in one release and the rest in the other. It's an internal feature for now, right? And then we deliver the interface in the next release, unless we think we can get the other RFC merged in the next day or two.
How would users download the current SBOM?
Sorry?
From the image? How would users download the current SBOM from the image if it's not spec'd out?
Between the two releases?
Yeah.
So right now, the run image can provide a label that describes its metadata that'll move on to the final app image, right? And so they don't have a standard way of pulling that information, but they can know that their base image SBOM is available via whatever label their base image set. And then if they, because we don't have a standardized interface for that release, they could look in the lifecycle metadata, find the field, pull it out, and then combine those two together to get, for now, an SBOM that is, you know, the understanding that it's not a standardized contract yet, and that will land to the next release, they could get the information, right?
I don't like that. Like, we should.
Then just don't use it until the release where it's standardized, right?
What's the point of putting the SBOM then? Like, if no tools can consume it.
Well, tools can consume it. They just don't have a standardized interface for consuming it. Yeah, they can't rely on it looking like that permanently, right?
That's the same as the tools not being able to consume it, right? Like if
I
they
don't
can't
think so.
rely on.
You wonder if are we rushing this too much? Because I'm thinking like, so this is like a hidden feature of the lifecycle in this API release.
I don't think it's a hidden feature. It's just not a feature with the standardized interface ready yet.
is there, I guess, what's the level of effort for standardizing it that we want to rush it? Like, what's the timeline?
I think we were hoping to get the PR merged, this week and kind of ship a release.
Can I ask?
That by a release, you mean just like a release candidate or like an actual release?
I think a release candidate first, but
Yeah.
start that process.
Yeah, would a release candidate be sufficient to prove the concept, but still be able to solidify it without an official release or final release, I should say?
I think the release candidate would allow like build pack authors to create the build packs, and then we can create an actual release with the label so that once the SBOMs are there, the tools that are consuming them can actually read it off. So at least from my perspective, the rush would probably be like having all the build packs use the new lifecycle to test out this functionality. They don't need to consume it, right? They just need to output it and see that it works. And then when we release the actual lifecycle candidate, we can also include the other things we are currently missing, which is like merging Cyclone DX and adding that label in. I think the Cyclone DX merge Go library thing is mostly done. It's going to happen in the next week or so. This label thing, I think, should be minor enough to be doable once we ship the release candidate out. So
I think I like the idea of cutting a release candidate first and then deciding if there's anything else we need to do before cutting the final release. I don't want to commit to like Cyclone DX merging. Seems like it's a larger thing. Like, I'm not saying we shouldn't add that eventually, but I'm not sure I agree that it has to go into the next release of the life cycle. The labeling, let's get the release candidate out and then make a call if that makes sense, and see what it looks like and decide if we should do it. Does that seem reasonable?
Yep.
We usually cut a release candidate anyways for life cycle releases as part of the process.
Yeah, I would also be skeptical like of just releasing this whole thing as a new version, because I would also like to test it before we have a concrete.
Are we saying that merging of the Cyclone DX bombs is going to be part of the next release? I guess my question is, should that be part of build pack API or platform API OS, right?
I think we should descope the merging of Cyclone DX in particular, because not just because I don't know when it'll be finished upstream, but because I have worries around rebase. Like, I think we can do it eventually, but I'd like to think harder about what rebase should look like if it has to do a merge of multiple. If it's not just a quick registry operation, it can be done for many, many applications at low cost, right? If there's something incurred there, if you have large SBOMs, I think I want to see more testing first. I'm not saying we shouldn't do it. It seems like we can ship something very usable without it. It's a feature that we can add, we can add a combined merged label later. It's purely additive. I don't see a reason to try to get it into the next release before we have a chance to kind of evaluate the impact of trying to merge file formats together from many applications simultaneously in scale scenarios.
But I'm not talking about merging the stack SBOM with the application SBOM. I'm just talking about merging the layer SBOM.
What's the purpose of merging the layer SBOMs if you can't merge it with the stack? You can always merge them all together later, right? I think we should do it. I think there's something concrete we can ship sooner. And if that means we should add the labels to standardize what that looks like first, then it seems pretty reasonable. But let's try to get the release candidate out first, maybe.
I think what we were discussing is to keep it in the spec as a may or like a should rather than a must in terms of merging. So that way we can ship the spec out and then have a lifecycle version update that adds the merging. So we don't change the spec says that platform may merge these, which also gives some leeway for platforms to do their own merge operation if they want to. And we can ship it out in the next lifecycle release without breaking the spec.
It seems okay to me. I don't know, Natalie.
I didn't have concerns about that. I think maybe it was mentioned at some point that might be surprising to build pack authors. Or I mean, like, hey, I didn't change any of my APIs. My APIs are all the same, but I bumped my lifecycle, and now I'm getting this extra layer. I'm getting something extra in my image that wasn't there before. Like, you know, I guess it would be a platform API bump, but I don't know. Given that this feature isn't widely used at this point, I don't know how realistic a concern that is, but it is a theoretical concern at least.
I mean, similar things happen when the platform API changes without the build pack API changing, right? Like the output layers directory or the application directory or whatever else can change, right? If you or the location of our current metadata files definitely change.
Yeah, I think the reproducibility aspect, if that's the concern, is if we have the exact same inputs, right? And by changing the lifecycle, the platform API or builder, right, the output should be expected to change or may change.
And then we should just take may merge out of the spec. And when we're ready to implement it, we put it in and we bump the platform API and we kind of preserve our reproducibility guarantee.
I don't have a strong stance, but I would say that if we go down that route, it might be beneficial because we could also find something along the way as we try to implement that may require additional changes. And that might not be true if we just leave it at may and obviously not be able to satisfy whatever's necessary otherwise. But I think the risk is low, so I'm not sure, again, it matters all too much.
I think just from like a consumer's point of view, if you're looking at that BOM directory later on, scanning it or whatever, like the individual SBOMs are under a different folder. The merge SBOM is a top level file. So your merge logic would probably have to change to account for that merge SBOM anyway. I don't think it'll be breaking anything, but yeah, it doesn't cause your app to behave different functionally, I would say.
Selfishly, I want to do a time check on this topic, only because of other things that I wanted to bring it up. I don't know if we could take that sort of conversation of whether or not it should be removed to the PR itself.
It seems good to me. I don't have a strong opinion about whether we suggest that in the future that we could have merging without making a spec change in the future in the spec for this release. What did you want to bring up, Javier?
I think it's a 266, the build image artifact format. I think that one's waiting for you, Stephen, and then it could be merged in.
build image artifact formats. This is part of the stack changes or removing stack changes. Is that right?
Yeah. So it's taking care of that. And ultimately what we're doing is we're composing the builder spec piece by piece. And so this is defining the build image.
Awesome. Were these labels from the RFC?
Yes. Mhm.
Was it distro or distribution?
I'm pretty sure it was distribution.
Okay, cool. I will take a look at that and approve as soon as possible.
Awesome. Thank you.
Anything else? Yeah, I see. It's just waiting on me. It's life cycle distribution spec. Is this one open too?
Yeah, I think that one's waiting on Joe.
Joe's
I
approval.
think we need him, right, for that quorum.
Got it. We are over time for this meeting. Do we want to, I guess, jump to RFCs really quickly, unless there's anything else in spec PRs that folks want to chat about, and try to identify, see if there are any people want to chat about tomorrow?
I do understand that like SBOM has a high priority to it, but it does also seem like there's a lot of different hands working on it. What's the final, I guess, say, is it the spec PRs themselves that will say this is what the contract actually looks like, regardless of how other people are creating their PRs or their implementation of it?
Yeah, I think we should get the spec PR correct. So to
Okay.
match what the lifecycle RFC we intend the RFC to look like. If that, or sorry, we intend the lifecycle PR to look like.
Cool.
Looks like we have a new and about images table for this week. Is this one we should get on the agenda for tomorrow?
Yeah, we could do that. I don't know if the individual proposing this will be able to attend, but we could try.
Cool.
I could add that as an action item for myself.
Got it. Do we usually add, where do we put these?
I think we sometimes just throw them in the doc for
Yeah.
tomorrow.
The doc at the top has like the agenda items.
It's the doc for tomorrow, right? For the working group. Where's the? Can somebody link the working group doc if you have it open? Or is somebody capturing it in that right now?
I could capture them.
Cool. Run image SBOM. It seems like there's still some things to talk about on this one, like when we want to standardize some of these, if we should do some of it early. So I'd say probably talk about this one also. Yeah. That's a draft. Anything on Project Toml converter to talk about?
Not from my side.
Anything about exportable layers to talk about?
That's still on me. I'll update it.
But no chat tomorrow?
I mean, I'll first update it and then we can chat with the new proposal. I mean, it's still the old one. We haven't updated it to the app, multiple app-doors thing we talked about.
Got it. But you don't want to talk about the multiple afters thing tomorrow.
I would first like update the RFC and have something concrete rather than, yeah.
Got it. System build packs. I don't know if anybody here is super involved in that one, so I'm going to skip over it. Utility build packs. It's an FCP, so it probably doesn't. I'm guessing that's going to get merged. Probably doesn't need a comment.
There were a few changes it asked for, but yeah, there were a few must that should be shoulds. That's it.
On the agenda or off the agenda?
I mean, depends on whether Joe has strong feelings about those musts or not.
How about we add it to the agenda just for a check?
Sounds good. Draft, Docker files. I don't have anything else. I think this is kind of ongoing. Oh, I was hoping Charles would show up to chat about. Actually, let's add this and talk about. I don't know if last time we talked about too much about the different. We talked about user space versus, like a Docker daemon based implementation. I guess add it, but we'll only talk about it if Charles shows up to chat about it, because I think it'd be really good to just get some time with him to talk through it.
He said he's on vacation this week.
Okay, so don't put it then. We'll save it for next week. We should probably find extra time to chat with him. Actually, I think that would be good. Make build layers read only for subsequent build packs. Yeah.
Thing that's still blocked on that POC.
Cool. All right.
And for 171 writable asset cache, that was Emily. Did that get handed over to a new champion?
There was a document she created combining all the different caching RFCs, but we discussed about it in one of the build pack author tooling meetings. It's supposed to be an entirely new RFC. I don't know what's going to happen with this.
So I guess, does it have somebody driving that change? I guess I'm thinking through either Pacato or somebody that took the baton.
I think Natalie probably knows Natalie and I discussed it, and then we discussed it with the rest of the backed contributors, but I don't think there's a clear champion.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, the reason why I bring it up is because we have some spec PRs that are pending on whether or not we're going to revert the other asset packages or asset cache that we have. The one that Dan worked on for quite a bit.
Dan Thorpe.
Yeah.
That's all right. Yeah. I think we decided to revert or to not move forward with asset packages and not move forward with writable asset cache, and instead create one unified, better way of dealing with caching that maybe also handles assets, but that, Emily was driving that effort and nobody has stepped up to take on that effort yet. And the current plan is wait till Emily comes back, unless somebody steps up and says, yep, I'm going to take this on and drive it through the project.
Okay. So there's no like real, I guess, need for this feature, at least not pressing from anybody right now.
I think the Pacato folks want some kind of asset, like not writable asset cache during build, but they want to be able to create an offline build pack that has vendored assets, that has the same ID as a build pack that does not have vendored assets. They still have that use case. And so it'd be great to see if someone on that side wanted to step up and own revamping the whole caching system for Cloud Unit build packs. But so far, nobody has volunteered to do that yet.
Cool.
All right. I think that's it. Do we need to sort the ones for the agenda tomorrow?
I don't personally think so. I think we just get in a room and see what happens.
Sounds good. Let's do it. Anything else? We'll jump to whatever is left of the other meeting.